over the last year, I started reading a lot more as a way to distract myself from other negative ways of using time. So like doom scrolling on TikTok or whatever, or just wasting my time basically. And I found that reading was a habit that I could build that makes me use my time more productively. Um, Also, whilst developing like skills like critical thinking and my attention span and all these things. So I wanted to put forward to you guys three books that are accessible to new readers, either because of their plots, their prose, or their themes, essentially. So the first book I wanted to talk about is Stoner by John Williams, which was released in the early 60s, I believe. And John Williams is an American author. So the main themes of this book are... Oh, I'll tell you what it's about first, actually. Fuck that. I'll give you one sentence because I always think it's best not to know what actually happens in the book. I hate the blurbs of books. So, like, I am the first person to hate on blurbs because I think they spoil so much of the book. So I'll give you one sentence. A boy who grew up on a farm in Missouri decides to go to university and study classics. That's all I'll give you. If you think that doesn't sell the book, then too bad, you're missing out. I think there's two main themes in this book. The first one, well, like two themes that really stood out to me. I think you could read it and take away 45 themes if you wanted to, but two that stood out to me. The first one is the cyclical nature of life. I think Williams is proposing this idea that life often repeats itself, and therefore we have to make the same or similar choices more than once in our life. It's up to us if we make the same choices again, or if we make different choices. But ultimately that you can't really live with regret because you will probably have to make, if you regret a choice, you'll probably have to make that same choice again. Life is somewhat about your ability to make decisions, whether good or bad, and learn from them, essentially. And I think what lends this theme to this book is that it covers a whole lifetime. So a lot of the books you read maybe only cover a few weeks or a few months or a few years of a span of a character's life. But since you get essentially from the beginning to the end of this character's life, you're really able to see the decisions he makes across a whole, across decades. The other theme, and I think this is the theme that really draws people to this book, and that's the theme of greatness, or like the subversion of greatness by the author. So when you read a history book, most books often start with a introductory page about the subject of the book. So for example, Alexander the Great was born in 356 BC. He inherited an army from his father Philip II, blah, 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 blah. He conquered Egypt, he conquered Persia, he conquered Greece, you get what I'm saying? This is the impact he has on the world, right? This is why we remember him. This book starts completely different from page 1 of chapter 1. This book starts with, this is the name of the subject. He probably won't really be remembered by anyone that he didn't have to interact with. So it's kind of subverting this idea of what if we thought is great and what actually is greatness. I think Williams is proposing this idea that we've always thought of greatness as what you leave in legacy, but maybe we should actually think of greatness as living a life that fulfills you. I guess you'll have to read the book, decide what you think about these themes. I think the other thing I wanted to say, and this is what makes it really accessible to new readers, is that it's really well written. So I flew through the book. It's 300 pages, okay, so it's not that long, for one. But you will fly through it because it is so beautifully written. And I think the fact that it was so beautifully written made me want to read it more than I wanted to scroll on TikTok or watch YouTube. So if I was on the bus, I was reading it. If I was waiting for a uni class, I was reading it. If I was waiting for dinner to cook, I was reading it, essentially. And I think this is what kind of helped me. Honestly, this book is what changed reading from like a chore to a habit, because I was able to read such a beautiful book that I really enjoyed reading and wanted to read. And then slowly, because of that, I started reading every day. So I think this book, I highly recommend. If you see it in a bookstore, cop it, read it. It'll help you. It'll help you develop reading as a habit. The next book I want to talk about is a book that everyone has at least heard of it, one of its characters, kind of. And that's Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I think everyone has heard of the story that Mary Shelley wrote the book when she was 18, while she was away on holiday with her brother and Lord Byron, after she had a nightmare, and they had a competition about who could write the scariest story while they were stuck in a thunderstorm, or whatever the actual story is. I don't know. I think it's an amazing book. I think the plot is just really, really exciting, and that's what draws in new readers. I think the writing can somewhat be a challenge, like it was written 200 years ago, so the language is quite different. If you can get over that, then I think the plot could 100% draw you in. Just a quick plot summary, I'll give you one sentence again. A man who is obsessed with natural sciences creates life. That's all I'm giving you, okay? I think the three main themes in this book, the first one would be this kind of interplay between nature and nurture. So how much your genetics determines who you are versus how much your environment determines who you are. And the progression you see of the creature, his humanity or morality, I think is this really interesting interplay between those two ideas. I think another theme is creation. And from that, how much responsibility you have to something that you create. And I think in terms of like a contemporary context, this idea can be branched out to like art and artists. So a lot of the people talk about now, can you separate the art from the artist? And I think this book kind of lends some of that ideas about creation to ideas like that. And the last one is ambition, how far someone is willing to go to achieve what they want to achieve, even if it feels unnatural, for example. I think something that makes this book really interesting to me is that it is riddled with intertextual references. When it was first released, it had a secondary title of The Modern Prometheus, which I think is an undercurrent that runs throughout the whole novel. When I was reading it, it's all I could think about. If you don't know who Prometheus is the myth of a titan who defied the gods by stealing fire and giving it to humanity and kind of sharing intelligence and technology with them, and aiding, their life. So the whole time you're reading it, you're thinking, the modern Prometheus, is it the man or the monster? It's so interesting how the two characters are so bound together and how they both have elements of playing God, but at the same time being a victim. Other intertextual references include Plutarch's Lives, the Sorrows of Young Werther, and Paradise Lost, all which create their own comment on humanity and literature, which I think is really interesting too. Something else that makes the book really interesting to me is learning about Mary Shelley's life and experience while writing the book. I would highly recommend listening to the book club's episode on the book, because I think they contextualize the novel really well, like put where Mary Shelley was in her life and maybe how she came to write it, but also they go through the plot quite well. I don't agree with their rating of the book or some of the things they say about the book, but I could talk about that another time, or if you leave a comment, maybe I could explain that a bit more. I don't really agree with how they rate it, but I think they do a good job contextualizing it. The last book I wanted to share with you guys is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. One sentence summary I would give is, a handsome man is brought into high society by two friends. That's all I'm giving you. I think you can work out a bit more with the title, but please don't read the blurb, it just spoils everything. Main themes in this book, I'd say one is beauty / hedonism. So hedonism is living your life in pursuit of pleasure. And beauty, I think it touches more on aesthetics of beauty. I don't want to spoil the book. I think the themes aren't too complicated. I think they're very accessible to new readers. And I think they're good lessons to learn, but I don't think it's anything you haven't heard before, essentially. The second theme has to do more with morality. So it has to do with the visibility of morality. If no one sees that you're doing bad things, how bad can it really be? It's a question I'll pose to you, but I think you can work it out. Something that makes this book one of my favorites, though, and that I think makes it, as a piece of literature or a text, so interesting, is the author Oscar Wilde's life, especially while he was writing the book. So Oscar Wilde is an amazing character. I highly recommend listening to the Rest is History podcasts about his life. They do an awesome job segmenting and going through his life and the trial of Oscar Wilde, which is so interesting. But I think a book warning against hedonism, written by a man living a life of hedonism, potentially, I think, is a really interesting piece of literature to dissect. Anyway, I think it's just really interesting. Also, a modern text, the film The Substance, this one right here, has a lot of cool intertextual interplay with the book. So if you watch that movie and you like the themes of that movie, I think you'd like the book. Or if you read the book and then watch the movie, the whole time you'll be thinking, whoa, like the director is 100%. I actually think I Googled it when I watched the movie originally, because the whole time I was watching it, I was thinking, bro, the parallels here with Dorian Gray are insane. And then I Googled it and the director was like, yeah, 100%. It was a massive inspiration for the film or whatever. So of the three books I recommend to new readers or people who just want to build reading as a habit, I would say choose Dorian Gray if you're looking for accessible themes. Choose Frankenstein if you're looking for a gripping plot. And choose Stoner if you're looking for something that's easy to read, a beautiful prose and a beautiful read. Otherwise, that's all I got for you for today. So, peace.